1 minute ago, George Clooney reveals the truth on day 17 of Diddy's trial. The courtroom was quiet, eerily so. Not the kind of quiet that follows order, but the kind that precedes collapse. On day 17 of the federal trial against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, no one expected what came next. No one expected the doors to open and George Clooney to walk through face set like marble, past stunned spectators, past defense counsel, past the man once known as Hollywood's kingmaker. Clooney didn't look left or right. He walked to the stand like a man bearing something sacred. And in many ways, he was. I never imagined I'd be here. Clooney began, his voice low but steady. But I've lived with this truth too long. What followed wasn't just testimony, it was revelation. A window into a world no one dared to believe existed. Not in this America, not in this industry. And certainly not under the smiling shadow of Diddy. Clooney's account was not sensational. It was surgical. Delivered with the same cadence he once used to narrate stories on genocide, war, and climate collapse. But today, the threat was closer. More personal. It was inside the house, inside the cameras, inside the fame. He spoke of his first invitation, a decade ago. A card, no return address, only GPS coordinates, and a time, 2:00 a.m. I thought it was a joke, he said, but a second message arrived. Anonymous. Follow the coordinates. Wear black. No phone. Curiosity won. It always does when you're new to that world, he admitted. He followed. Was driven through industrial alleys, parking decks, until they stopped beneath a well-known theme park he refused to name. I was escorted through a service corridor, he said, past flickering lights, silent men in black suits. No one asked my name. They already knew it. Then came the hatch, the steel hiss, the descent. What he saw inside, he told the jury, changed the way he viewed every film set, every gala, every handshake. It wasn't a party, Clooney said. It was an operation. A vast underground chamber pulsed with soft red light. Celebrities, politicians, billionaires in velvet robes. And then he paused them. He called them nuggets. The name wasn't his. It's what everyone else called them. Like it meant nothing. They had no limbs. Some were blindfolded, mute, presented on pillows like props. They said it was voluntary, but it didn't feel voluntary. It felt ritualistic. Gasps rippled. A juror wept. I never signed the NDA, he continued. That's how they trap you. With silence contracts and security firms that don't guard, they record. Instead, he was placed in a side lounge, a room with one glass wall. He watched. For hours. I didn't know what I was watching, he said. I just knew it was wrong. He left before sunrise, drank his whiskey, didn't talk about it for months. Until the next envelope arrived. It always starts with the envelope, he said. No name, no instructions. Just a letter P in wax. Clooney revealed he kept records, photos, canceled meetings, names, but he never spoke, because silence is survival in that world, and survival is everything when your currency is relevance. But something changed. It was a gala. 2016. Diddy walked up, hugged me like a brother, smiled for the cameras, whispered, "Still part of the family, right?" Clooney nodded then, but inside something cracked. Over time, silence became guilt. Projects began falling through. Producers stopped calling. A director vanished mid-contract. And then came the tabloids about others who had been there. Who spoke, who disappeared. They don't destroy you with violence, Clooney said. They use silence. They whisper a scandal into the wind and let the world do the rest. He shared stories of others who had come to him. A young actor, a screenwriter, a political advisor, all folded into the machine, all erased when they resisted. And then came the photo. He received it in 2017, delivered to his lake house. No return address, no message, just 6 photos. One, he said, was approved for the court. It showed a room, the chamber, the circle. A stage in the middle, red velvet, a nugget at the center. Blindfolded, surrounded by 5 men. One of them, he choked, was someone Clooney had worked with, admired. He was sitting closest, Clooney said. He smiled. A silence fell that no stenographer dared break. Clooney turned to the judge. I kept that photo. I gave the rest to my lawyer, because I knew someday I'd be forced to choose. He paused, looked at Diddy for the first time. He was always in the middle, never touched anything, but always watched, always smiled, a long breath. And I smiled too, Clooney said, because I thought I had to. That's the lie. You don't have to. You just think you do. He then revealed a sealed envelope, a flash drive. I received this in 2019, he said. It was surveillance. From inside the chamber. It wasn't edited. It wasn't blurred. He described what he saw. Diddy entering the circle, removing his mask, looking up at the camera. And then he whispered, Clooney said, I couldn't hear it, but I felt it. He destroyed the original, made copies, then moved his children out of the country. I went dark, he said. No press, no premieres, just waiting. Until now. Now he said the silence must end. Because monsters don't live in the dark. They live in what we refuse to say. He ended with one sentence. This isn't about fame. It's about the air we breathe and who controls it. Then slowly he stood, and the courtroom didn't move. Because when George Clooney said he was done being silent, he meant it. The courtroom remained still long after Clooney stepped down from the stand. Reporters fumbled with recorders they'd forgotten were on. Lawyers whispered, but no one really spoke. Something had shifted. Not just in the room, but in the narrative. Clooney had done more than testify. He had reframed the entire trial. Until that moment, the case against Sean Diddy Combs had unfolded like any other high-profile scandal, legalese, redacted memos, endless speculation. But with Clooney's testimony, it no longer felt like a celebrity courtroom drama. It felt like a reckoning. When the court reconvened after recess, murmurs still lingered, but the tone had changed. People weren't gossiping anymore. They were whispering like survivors. The prosecutor approached the bench. Your Honor, she said, we respectfully request to enter into sealed record exhibit 143. The photographic evidence provided by Mr. Clooney, as well as the sealed affidavit naming further parties of interest. Judge Holbrook nodded somber. So ordered. Then from the back of the room, a voice called out. It was soft, female, trembling. I have something to add. Heads turned. Spectators leaned in. Even the bailiff hesitated. A woman stepped forward. Late 60s, maybe older. No legal team, no media escort, just a small leather folder clutched to her chest. The court paused. The judge asked her name. Delia Grange, she replied. Former costume coordinator, Paramount 1981 to 2009. I worked with Mr. Combs. Not directly, but I know that cave. The room shifted. She was sworn in, and what followed stunned even the most hardened observers. I saw the blueprints, she said. I helped sew the robes. Gasps. They were custom designed. Velvet, yes. But lined with tracing fibers. Threads embedded with microchips. It was more than costume. It was registration. She paused. I didn't know what they were used for, until I got curious. She told the court how one day in 2014, she followed a delivery manifest, a shipment marked for private use. It led to a warehouse near Anaheim. She described a tunnel hidden beneath an abandoned staff kitchen. She never went far, she didn't have clearance, but what she saw was enough. The robes were hung in temperature-controlled lockers, tagged, numbered, assigned. The implication was clear, every participant tracked. Then she opened her folder and revealed an inventory list. Codes, initials, a sequence. Your Honor, she said item 17B was labeled GC. That's Mr. Clooney. He didn't wear it. But they had one ready. Even Diddy glanced up. The prosecutor moved quickly. We ask that this list be authenticated and admitted. But Judge Holbrook raised his hand. I want a recess, he said. Now. As the court emptied once more, eyes locked on Clooney. But he didn't move. He sat still, hands folded, watching. Outside the courthouse, chaos erupted. News vans circled. Social feeds exploded. The term velvet tracking began trending globally within minutes. Inside, something more profound was happening. Court staff gathered. Paralegals whispered over sealed folders. Bailiffs moved with uncharacteristic unease. A low pressure filled the air like something tectonic had begun to shift. The next day brought more. A tech specialist from a private firm was called in. Unnamed for security, they testified behind tinted glass. We were hired to manage the surveillance infrastructure below the park, the voice explained. It was sophisticated, multi-layered, live monitored, audio and thermal signature capture. Redundant backup stored offshore. And who commissioned it? The prosecutor asked. A pause. A holding group fronting for Combs Enterprises, the voice replied. More gasps. Were the events recorded? The prosecutor continued. Yes, selectively. Mostly for insurance purposes or leverage. That word landed hard. Leverage. It clarified everything. The robes, the nuggets, the cameras. This wasn't indulgence, it was infrastructure. It was insurance. The tech testified that while some feeds were erased in real-time gold-tier events, those involving high-profile figures were stored in offline drives. Drives that still exist? The judge asked. Unknown, the tech said. But there are backups. And a retrieval key? Silence. That key, the tech explained, was split into 3 biometric signatures. And who holds them? Asked the prosecutor. One is assumed to be Diddy, the voice replied. The others, we believe, were distributed. To who? No answer. But the weight of the implication was enough. That night, George Clooney released a brief public statement. I did not come to destroy a man. I came to expose a system. I have no further comment, only copies. It was the phrase, only copies, that set off the next wave. Media outlets dissected every word. Forums speculated. Theories bloomed like wildfire. And somewhere in all of that noise, someone flinched. The very next morning, a sealed envelope arrived at the courthouse. No postage, no return address. Inside a thumb drive, black casing, red trim, no labels. It was sent directly to the judge. What it contained has not yet been disclosed, but courtroom sources described the judge's reaction as ashen and immobilized. He adjourned court for the rest of the day without explanation. Back in chambers, attorneys murmured one word again and again, fail-safe. And yet amid the spiraling revelations, amid the rising panic, and the sudden lawyer withdrawals, Clooney remained quiet, present, watching, because something had shifted. No longer was he the witness, or the actor, or the man with the folder. Now he was the storm's eye. And Diddy, once smiling, once untouchable, sat still for the first time. His hand trembled. Just once. But it did. And Clooney saw it. Because when the silence breaks, the empire listens. The tremble wasn't lost on Clooney. He saw it. So did the court clerk. So did the court artist, who later admitted in an offhand remark to the press, it was the only time Diddy looked small. The next morning, the gallery was full before sunrise. People lined the courthouse steps, phones raised, hoping to capture something, anything, that might explain what was happening behind those oak doors. But nothing could explain it. Not fully, not yet. When the court resumed, Judge Holbrook entered later than usual. He was pale, his robe unfastened at the collar. His voice trembled, not unlike Diddy's hand the day before. We are entering uncharted territory, he said flatly. What we have now transcends this trial. He paused, looked at the sealed drive on the bench, then looked at Clooney. Mr. Clooney, would you return to the stand? Clooney stood slowly, walked forward without a word. Mr. Clooney, the judge said, "Do you believe others in this courtroom have knowledge of what you testified to?" "I do." "And do you believe they have remained silent?" "Yes." There was no anger in his voice, just gravity. The judge nodded. "Then we will proceed. Not as a trial against one man, but an inquiry into a possible institutional structure. Mr. Prosecutor." The room bristled. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. The government introduced a new exhibit, a series of financial ledgers obtained through subpoena from shell foundations registered near the unnamed theme park. The transactions were masked as charitable outreach and private security development, but dates aligned with the parties. Names were hidden behind layers, but two slipped through. One, a well-known politician. Another, the CEO of a popular AI tech firm. Suddenly, it wasn't just entertainment at risk. It was government. It was infrastructure. And Diddy still frozen. Not smiling, not watching. Just there. Clooney was asked if he recognized the names. He nodded once. "I saw them both," he said. "In robes. In the circle." That was the moment the defense snapped. Diddy's lead counsel stood face flushed. "Your Honor, this has become a witch hunt. We object to speculative identification and narrative conjecture masquerading as testimony." But the judge didn't respond to him. He looked at Clooney. "Would you be willing to submit the names you remember under seal?" "I already have," Clooney said, and passed an envelope across the witness box. The defense attorney recoiled. Diddy's hands dropped to the table. It was then that George Clooney did something unexpected. He removed a single photograph from his inside jacket pocket. "This wasn't approved," he said softly. "But I think the court needs to see it." The judge hesitated, then motioned him forward. The photo was black and white, slightly grainy, but clear. A group of masked figures surrounding a low pedestal. At the center, a figure without limbs, face partially obscured by blindfold and dim lighting. And behind them, a man partially turned toward the camera, robes parted just enough to reveal a monogrammed cuff. It read JF. There was no gasp this time, just the sound of 1,000 throats locking shut, because that was a senator's cuff, a sitting one. The courtroom didn't erupt, it contracted, like lungs pulling in a gasp they couldn't release. Clooney continued. "He told me once backstage at a fundraiser that power isn't money. It's silence. And the ability to enforce it." The judge cleared his throat. "We're taking a recess?" But Clooney remained in place. "I'm not finished." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." Clooney turned slowly to face the gallery. "There's something I haven't shared," he said. "Not publicly. Not until now." He reached into his folder and pulled out a red velvet ribbon neatly rolled. "This was sent to me 6 weeks ago," he explained. No note. Just a date. Today. And a name. He held up the ribbon. Embossed in gold, the initiated remember. The courtroom froze. "Who sent it?" the prosecutor asked. "I don't know, but I suspect it was someone in this room." There was movement. A woman in the third row stood up suddenly, then sat back down. Clooney looked to the back, then up at the booth, the recording booth. "The red light is on again," he said. Eyes darted upward. Sure enough, the booth's window glowed faintly. A tiny red dot blinked in the corner. Someone was watching. The judge turned to the bailiff. "Clear that room. Now." But by the time the guards got up there, it was empty. Just a mic. Still hot. And a note. It read, "If you read this, you're not outside the circle anymore." The tension broke into panic. The gallery was evacuated, media locked out. Even Diddy's legal team demanded emergency recess. But Clooney. He remained seated. Still. Calm, because he had known this would happen. Had waited for it. He leaned toward the mic. "Now you see," he said. "This wasn't just a cave. It was an architecture, and we all helped build it. The lights flickered, and somewhere in the booth above, a second red light blinked on. The second red light didn't just blink, it pulsed. Like a warning. Like a signal sent from deep within the system to those who knew how to read it. Security scrambled. Court staff shouted over one another. The bailiff issued evacuation orders, but George Clooney didn't move. He stayed at the witness stand, fingers interlocked, eyes fixed on the now empty surveillance booth. The note still lay on the desk beside him, the ink freshly smudged, where someone, presumably the operator, had folded it in haste. If you read this, you're not outside the circle anymore. It wasn't a threat. Not in tone. It was worse. It was an invitation withdrawn. Judge Holbrook returned to the bench 20 minutes later, visibly rattled. His robe hung loose again. His speech, for the first time in the entire trial, trembled. This court is suspending gallery access indefinitely. This proceeding is no longer merely a criminal trial. It is a matter of national security. Then he looked directly at Clooney. Mr. Clooney, are you prepared to submit your journal for federal custody? A pause. I am, but only with full protective oversight. And redacted witness protocol, Clooney replied. Done. A marshal took the leather-bound notebook, its spine frayed, its pages sealed in wax. Inside, reportedly, were years of notes, dates, names, coded references, symbols Clooney had sketched from memory after each silent encounter. Parties he never wanted to attend, conversations he never wanted to remember. He had cataloged them all, not for revenge, not even for justice, but for proof. For the day the system might forget, and he could remind it. But even with the journal in hand, the prosecution looked shaken. We need time, the lead prosecutor said. This reaches beyond Mr. Combs. We may be facing coordinated obstruction, digital suppression, intelligence leaks. You're saying we've been infiltrated, the judge asked. We're saying the circle never left the building. Clooney nodded. That's how it survives, by being everywhere and nowhere. For the first time in the trial, Diddy spoke. I want to make a statement. The room froze. Even the judge paused his pen. Proceed, Holbrook said cautiously. Diddy stood. No robe, no mask, just a navy blue suit tailored to precision. There's a reason I smiled for cameras, he began. You think it was pride? It wasn't. It was leverage. Because in our world, exposure is suicide. Unless you control the lens. Gasps. I didn't build the circle, he continued. I inherited it. And I didn't create the rules. I just played by them better than anyone else. And the nuggets the prosecutor asked. The disabled victims, you paraded them. They weren't victims, Diddy replied coolly. They were currency. The circle trades in discomfort. In taboos. What shocks today becomes accepted tomorrow. That's the arc of control. Clooney flinched for the first time. You used people, he said. I used attention, Diddy snapped back. You think you're brave for speaking now? I watched you sip from gold cups too, George. You weren't inside the chamber, but you were inside the system. The courtroom recoiled. Diddy took a slow breath. And I stayed in because I understood something you didn't. Power doesn't corrupt. It reveals. And most of the people gasping around us right now, they already knew. They just didn't want to lose their seats. The judge banged his gavel. You will not use this court to justify. But Diddy cut him off. I'm not justifying. I'm confessing. Because this ends one of two ways. You dismantle the circle, or it rebrands. It was a chilling prediction. The silence afterward wasn't legal. It was existential. Outside protests had begun. Some believed Clooney. Others believed Diddy. Others just wanted someone to tell them which side of the story was less terrifying. But inside, something else was happening. From the evidence room, an intern named Miles, fresh out of Stanford badge still laminated, approached the court with a discovery. Your Honor, he said quietly, you need to see this. He carried a USB stick in a sealed evidence pouch. It hadn't been logged. Not officially. We found it inside the original packaging of the red velvet ribbon, taped to the bottom seam. The judge turned to Clooney. "Did you know?" No, Clooney said. "But I suspected there'd be more." The drive was projected onto a private monitor behind the bench. Only the judge, prosecutor, and court recorder saw its contents. They emerged minutes later, visibly altered. "What is it?" Clooney asked. The prosecutor looked up slowly. "It's not a video. It's a directory. A directory of names. They brought it to the public screen. Names scrolled, slowly at first, then faster. At least 100, then 200. By the time the list stopped, it had surpassed 477 individuals. Some names were redacted, others were not. Actors, bankers, athletes, senators, journalists, 2 Supreme Court clerks, a foreign diplomat. One name matched a former vice president of the United States. And, at the bottom, a single sentence, all initiated before December 2021. All bound, all archived. The word archived wasn't defined, but it didn't need to be. It hung in the air like a coded threat, like a final command waiting to be executed. Clooney stood, hands shaking now. "What happens next?" he asked the judge. The room waited. But Judge Holbrook didn't answer. He simply looked at the names, at the final sentence, then back at Clooney. And for the first time in the entire trial, the judge whispered, barely audible even in the mic, "We're already inside. We're already inside." The words didn't echo, they sank, like stones dropped into still water, disturbing everything beneath. Clooney stood frozen at the witness box. The prosecutor slowly turned off the screen, still glowing with names that had for too long existed only in whispers and locked rooms. Everyone in the courtroom, from clerks to camera crews, seemed to realize at once this wasn't a case anymore. It was a confession of the system itself. Outside, the chaos multiplied. Protesters now numbered in the thousands, some demanding arrests, others calling it all a smear campaign against the elite. Sorricker Circle files trended globally. So did Diddy Truth and Clooney Code. Cable anchors fumbled through statements that felt like scripts gone rogue. Even the market shifted. Entertainment stocks dipped. Surveillance tech firms surged. But inside the courtroom, silence held. Clooney exhaled slow and deliberate. "If we're already inside," he said, voice steady, "then we either expose the walls or die pretending they're not there." Judge Holbrook glanced up. "You knew this might happen." "I hoped it wouldn't," Clooney replied, "but I prepared in case it did." "What did you prepare?" the prosecutor asked, a cautious tone creeping into her voice. Clooney stepped down from the witness stand, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a manila envelope, this one with a blue wax seal. Different from the red. Different from the black. He held it up. "This seal was only given to one group," he said. "The ones who said no. Who walked away early. Who were punished in silence. Blacklisted, ghosted, erased quietly. I call them the exits." He opened the envelope. Inside 12 letters. Each dated. Signed. Some typed, some handwritten. They were testimonials. From actors now working as school teachers. From producers who'd left the country. From one woman who once headed a billion-dollar PR firm, now living under a new name in rural Ireland. He read the first aloud. "They told me my name would disappear." And it did. Not just from marquees, but from memories. Friends forgot me. Agents stopped replying. My face was scrubbed from promos I already filmed. But the worst part wasn't the erasure. It was the knowing. That I let it happen to others just so it wouldn't happen to me. Gasps filled the chamber again. Clooney read another, then another. Each one building not toward rage, but toward collective grief. The court was no longer hunting a villain. It was digging a grave for something long dead, but never buried its own complicity. Then Clooney stopped. He looked straight at Diddy. You were the face, he said, but you weren't the structure. Diddy didn't deny it. He looked up with hollow eyes. No, I was just the gravity. The center they orbited around. Why now? The judge asked him. Why admit this? Diddy shrugged. Because they've already chosen a new center. A silence fell sharper than before. Who, the prosecutor asked. Diddy shook his head. Not for me to say. But look at your own lists. You'll find them. Not wearing robes this time, wearing lab coats, conference badges, foundation pins. Clooney stiffened. So the circle never ends. It just evolves. That's power, Diddy said. Not permanence? Adaptation. For the first time, the judge broke protocol. He closed the docket, removed his glasses. This court cannot try an organism, he said. It can only dissect it. And right now, what we've uncovered is a body with no single heart, just a circulatory system that keeps it alive. Clooney stepped forward again. I don't care if we kill the whole thing. I care if people know it's real. That's enough for me. No said a voice from the gallery. It was Miles, the intern. The same one who found the USB in the ribbon seam. I think it can be dismantled. But not from the top. The judge raised an eyebrow. Speak clearly, son. Miles approached with a new folder. I've spent the last 72 hours reverse engineering the metadata on the USB drive. There's a signature. A ping to a secondary directory. Not on a private server, but on a public distributed blockchain. Gasps again. You're saying, Clooney began. I'm saying someone leaked a failsafe. An open source one. Like a Trojan horse. But instead of collapsing the system, it exposes it. Permanently. He plugged in his laptop. On screen appeared a simplified user interface. One by one, names from the original list began populating on a map linked to known Transactions Foundation grants, obscure IP addresses. I think the exits built this, Miles said. A few of them were coders, weren't they? Clooney smiled faintly. One taught me how to encrypt on a burner laptop in Prague. The judge leaned forward, and this would make the circle impossible to hide. It doesn't crash the system, it turns on every light inside it. For a full minute, no one moved. Then Judge Holbrook sat back in his chair. Mr. Clooney, he said, how does it end? Clooney turned to Diddy, then to the court. It ends when we stop mistaking silence for sophistication. When we stop protecting monsters because we admire their museums. When we stop applauding kings who rule from beneath velvet floors. And then his voice dropping to a whisper. It ends when we choose not to stay seated. He paused, looked around the room. One final time. I stood. The judge nodded. So did you. The gavel fell not as punctuation, but as release. Outside the courthouse, the map was already live. In homes, studios, Senate offices, university libraries, conference halls, people were logging in, watching, clicking names, cross-checking transactions, peeling back the system layer by layer. Diddy was remanded into custody pending further charges. But in truth, the verdict had already been passed, not just on him, but on everything that had enabled him. And Clooney. He walked out alone. No entourage, no press agent, no limousine. Just a man who had told the truth loud enough that the silence couldn't cover it anymore. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel watched. He felt free.